Worried about your optic fogging and preventing you from getting accurate hits? It's not really an issue. Hey everybody, Aaron Cowens, Sage Dynamics. This video we're going to talk about red dot sights for duty use. It certainly seems that everything in training and practice is cyclical in nature. Something new is presented, it's discussed, it's debated, it's argued about. People get personal, people get professional, experts weigh in, and eventually people decide which side of the argument they're on, if there are two sides. Sometimes there's more than two. And every now and then someone learns something new, or they become more open-minded or more critical, they gain more experience, and they switch sides. So it's no surprise when a topic that some people may believe was put to bed when we talked about patrol rifles and military service rifles comes back up when a similar technology is introduced to handguns. And what I'm talking about is red dot sights, as I already said, the topic of the video. So when the red dot sight became more prevalent, when you started seeing it on service rifles, and then you started seeing it on law enforcement patrol rifles and self-defense rifles, one of the arguments that was made was battery life. And that's a very valid argument, because battery life isn't, or I should say isn't what it wasn't always what it is now. Although now you look at Aimpoints, Trijicons, and some of the other optics out there, their battery life is great. Turning them on is intuitive, simple, something easy to do. But we also get into the issue of moving from different temperatures, such as the optic becoming fogged. And that's a new debate, or a new point of contention among some people that do not feel that the red dot sight is duty ready for a handgun because of maybe battery life, maybe reliability, or what I'm seeing more and more of is the fact that if you move from an air-conditioned area into a hot and humid area, the lens can condensate. And that's very true, that can happen. However, we've had a solution to that problem for about 60 years. Because I'm a fan of science and being specific, let's first look at what we're talking about when we use an RDS. Red dot sight, the most prevalent one for handguns is going to be the Trijicon, the RMR, which is my chosen micro reflex sight for handguns. How do we use it? Well, we focus on what we want to shoot, and we superimpose the dot over that target. So the target remains crisp, clear, clean, and in focus. The red dot is superimposed over a desired point of impact. We hold off if necessary, and that's how we get our knowledgeable point of aim, point of impact. If the lens becomes fogged, that could potentially prevent us from being able to clearly see that which we're shooting at if we're using one eye. But because we have binocular vision, we have two eyes, and the optic, generally speaking, is only going to be lined up on one of them. Very true with rifles, also true with handguns. I am extremely right eye dominant, however I shoot handgun left-handed. When the optic fogs up on me, I can only think of a couple times where it's actually happened. And even then, it wasn't a huge catastrophic deal. I could still roughly make out my target through the lens, but because I have another eye, I was still able to superimpose my dot over where I wanted to hit and get shots off. And I can't remember specifically if it even caused me any degree of hesitation whatsoever. Now, I say I'm extremely eye dominant. I need to bring that up because some people feel that their eye dominance can be a crutch to this type of shooting, which I'm going to discuss, and it's not. It just takes practice just like anything else. The chance of an optic fogging up on you in the very moment you need it is certainly no reason to not use it. It's just a reason to be prepared for that eventuality. The argument of optics on rifles has pretty much been put to bed. Very, very rarely do I see someone who's still using strict iron sights. And even usually then it's because they just haven't spent a lot of time on a red dot, or they feel that it's not something they need because their firearms focus is more hobby and they shoot a lot of iron sights, and maybe they do competition shooting or what have you. So the small minuscule possibility is no reason at all to not use an RDS on a rifle or on a handgun, because the advantages far, far, far outweigh the disadvantages. So when one eye is blocked, let's say, for example, you draw your duty handgun, or you raise your duty rifle, your self-defense rifle, your self-defense handgun, and the optic is condensated to where you can't clearly see through it, or can't really see through it at all. This is a condition known as phoria. Basically, one of your eyes is going to focus on if it's opaque, your eye might reaccommodate because it's now not able to see through. It can only see the optic body, the fogginess. It's not able to clearly see through it. Whereas your other eye may want to continue to look to infinity or to whatever your focal distance was. This condition can cause focus issues. Obviously, one eye is trying to do something different than the other one. It can also cause ocular drift, to where you can almost go cross-eyed or split in the middle. And this is obviously a huge concern. And this is something that people experience when they're not accustomed to, or they haven't practiced or haven't been trained in using something like a collimated gun sight. Some of the original red dot sights were occluded eye gun sights or collimated gun sights, first used in combat. If you look at that, the Sante Raid, and I believe that's what it was, Sante Raid. And you look going back, the original aim points. And some of the original optics that were out there for red dot use, outside of like a magnified optic like a scope, used this concept. I think Glenn Bindon from Trijicon made it the most famous. He developed the Bindon aiming concept of the Trijicon for the ACOG, because that's a fixed 4 power, fixed 3 power, fixed 6 power, whatever your flavor is. The TA31 is probably the most prevalent fixed 4 power. It allowed people to use that optic in close quarters by using the Bindon aiming concept, or using occluded eye shooting. So if you understand this concept and you understand this technique and you practice it occasionally, if you do carry an RDS, and if you do carry an RDS, be it duty rifle or handgun, I would strongly recommend that this is something you work into your practice, because even though it's a small possibility, it can still happen. So you need to know how to shoot with both eyes open through your RDS in the event that your RDS becomes condensated and you're not able to clearly get definitive vision through it, and you're not able to use it as you traditionally would. Of course, I'm big on practicing what I preach. My duty gun, this is my duty and my everyday carry gun, Glock 17, done by Agency Arms, their field package. It has an RMR. Now, my rear sight is forward, and I've done a video topic on that in the past, but that's kind of irrelevant to the topic at hand, because if this glass becomes occluded, if this glass becomes fogged, if this glass breaks, if anything prevents me from being able to see through this window, then I'm going to use something similar to basically the Bindon aiming concept or occluded eye shooting. It's going to allow me to still deliver accurate gunfire, despite the fact that the gun is going to be lined up on my right eye, because I'm extremely right eye dominant. But my left eye is still there, it still exists, and it's still able to give me the data that I need in order to shoot accurately. And I can't think of any way to really drive that point home other than to just demonstrate it. Just so you can get an idea of what I'm going to be dealing with, I can't see my target through that tape at all. Obviously, condensation would have to be super bad to replicate this. Of course, a shattered window on the optic, which is even less likely, or some mud, dirt, foreign debris, who knows, could make it this bad. But this is kind of worst case scenario to really drive the technique home. So that's what I'm going to be working with while I shoot. Let's start off a fairly likely distance, but I also don't want super training wheels. I'm just going to literally aim. The dot's going to be superimposed, but my right eye is going to feed me the data that I'm picking up past it. Because of my binocular vision, I'm able to superimpose the image from my right eye in my mind over my left eye and still be able to shoot accurately. Now we moved it just a little further back, but the technique remains the same. Distance isn't really going to make the ability to shoot accurately any more difficult. How about an increased distance with a smaller margin of error? I'm going to go ahead and default to the head. The technique's not going to change. So what if I was this far away and my optic was condensated or otherwise blocked? Guess I'll die. Oh wait, no I won't, because the technique still works. Now, these are just some anecdotal examples of still being able to be accurate while using the Bindon aiming concept or occluded eye shooting or whatever name you want to use. The micro red dot sight is here to stay. You're going to see it on duty guns. I've been carrying one on my duty gun and my everyday carry gun for about 3 years. I wasn't always a fan. My mind had to be changed because, well, I had to use it and I had to get used to it and I had to understand some new concepts. There's a distinct advantage to having it on the gun, more than one, and the disadvantages or potential disadvantages are greatly outweighed by the distinct advantages that it presents. For law enforcement purposes, it's going to be a very steep, long road. You're not going to see them be adopted widespread for many, many years to come, but it is the way of the future. It's a significant reduction of liability because it allows the shooter, the officer, the soldier, whoever, to maintain constant focus on the threat while they're engaging. So you could potentially cut down on a lot of mistake of fact shootings where maybe by the time sight picture and sight alignment were acquired, the suspect or the bad guy or whatever ceased to be a threat, and it wasn't known because the focus was on that front sight. Another thing, of course, and this is something I brought up and will continue to bring up because some people still don't know, is it eliminates multiple focal plane shooting. It's one focal plane when used correctly, which goes back to you being able to maintain that focus on the threat. And I say potential disadvantages because the lens fogging is a potential thing that can happen. Small window, no pun intended, of opportunity, and conditions have to be specifically right for that to happen. There's proactive measures you can take if you carry one of these to prevent that. You can coat these lenses with a product called Cat Wrap, which significantly reduces the already small chance of the window condensating during carry, going from an air-conditioned car or building out to a hot, humid outdoors. Battery life, preventative maintenance. Also, make sure you're using the right kind of batteries. I wouldn't put Energizers in these. Duracells are good enough to go to the moon. They're good enough for your optic. I found that Energizers are just not reliable long-term, especially on an RDS on a handgun, because they just apparently just can't take the abuse that the Duracell batteries seem to handle just fine. Aside from battery life and the window possibly condensating on you, there aren't really any potential disadvantages to the system. There's a training curve. But you have to re-understand or re-teach yourself handgun shooting. Most people can pick up a rifle with an RDS and proficiency is never an issue. They can go back to iron sights. Proficiency is not an issue as long as they've dedicated sufficient amount of time to both systems, and they can switch back and forth pretty seamlessly. And I think a lot of that has to do with sight radius and just understanding of the system. When it comes to a handgun, there's that learning curve. People feel like they're slower. There's a presentation issue because with a rifle I have that cheek weld. With a handgun I don't. I've got 2 points of contact and I got to get a frame of reference in front of my face, which is kind of a different conversation. I've addressed that in a video before. But the learning curve for new shooters is significantly smaller. It is an additional investment, I get that. If your department doesn't authorize this, and this conversation really isn't for you yet anyway, but it would be significantly easy, really easy, to write a justification letter for the use of these on optics to at least get your department to start thinking about introducing them to patrol. Granted, it's probably going to go SWAT first, which is kind of silly to me. And I'm speaking from a SWAT background. It's the patrol guys that are most likely to get in the gunfight. It's not the SWAT dudes. But some departments just stack the high-end gear up top with their SWAT guys, and patrol gets what they get. But of course, individual officers, if you guys want to reach out to me, and if you're looking to write a justification for these for your department, it's something that you've been tasked with, or something that you want to take it upon yourself to do to at least get it in the system, I'll be more than willing to help, because especially with Trijicon's new Type 2 coming out, which is much more prepared for the recoil of a handgun than the older Type 1s are. You're going to see, I'd say within the next decade, that this is going to be more common than uncommon, not only on duty guns, but also on everyday carry guns. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.